Casting with Kerry Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week's guest is the ghillie on the Mount Juliet Estate in Kilkenny. He talks of the River Nore and the story of how he got into the job at only the age of 15. He is also a qualified APGAI single-hand casting instructor and gives demonstrations around the country at various shows. An interesting guy to chat with, and with a few stories to tell. Welcome to my chat with Dan O'Neill. Thanks very much for joining me, Dan.
You're welcome. Like we were saying, we kind of tried to plan it for a little while now, and different things happened and that. But we got here and we're here anyway, so that's the main thing.
It was, yeah. Well, how was your season last year?
Yeah, the season was. We had a good season. We had an okay season. Salmon wise, I suppose it was slightly disappointing. We met perfect conditions, kind of April, May, June, and they just weren't there. But we did get some early on, and kind of to the maybe mid to late August we got a few, and then a lot of rain came in and kind of put the river out of, we'll say, being fishable for probably the month of September, you know.
Yeah. Well, for listeners who don't know, when we talk in the river now, you're talking about the River Nore, because you're the ghillie on the Mount Juliet Estate, yeah?
That's right, yeah. So that's kind of where I suppose there was a couple of different times fishing kind of took off for me a little bit. And I suppose the very first, well, that was probably the second, was starting in Mount Juliet. I started in Mount Juliet when I was 14. Guiding when I was 14, I was bringing different people out from everywhere. But I was from the country, and I hadn't really, like, got in Goran, and I hadn't really heard an American voice before, only on telly. So I was kind of half fascinated with the first people I was bringing. They had this American voice, and I was absolutely fascinated. And nature was a huge part of my life. And I remember talking to them and saying to the people, "Do you have eagles where you're from?" And they're like, "Yeah, we see eagles all the time." And I was absolutely, like, the biggest thing I've seen was probably a rook, or maybe a heron, maybe down the river or something. But I was always I was just fascinated by that. And then it grew a little bit more. I started taking kind of more of a hand on the fishery as I got a little bit older and started building my knowledge, I suppose, you know. I mean, I got some strange looks. You know, I often had my old manager, Matt Bulger. You know, Matt would organise the booking, and we would meet in the fishing room in the Manor House. And I would, you know, Matt would be talking to the two guests, and they say, "Oh, here's your ghillie now." And this 14-year-old comes down with, like, a ghillie bag thrown over his shoulder, a pair of waders that were probably 3 times too big for me, a fly rod, like, and they're kind of looking, going, "Oh God, here we go." But they weren't long about listening to you. When you went down there and you got a couple of trout, or you brought them to a place and you kind of explained the river a little bit, you know. So that was it. It was good. It was a nice way to start, you know.
How did you get the job, you can say, at 14?
Yeah, so really, when I was probably maybe 13, just turning 14 perhaps, and my mum was working there and she got me a job as linen porter. So my duties were to bring linen on different floors so that the staff that were making the bedrooms or whatever didn't have to carry them. So I was up and down doing the donkey work. But I remember one day I was in the basement, is where the linen room was. So I was down the basement loading up the bags, and they were those horrible kind of woven threaded bags, and they really used to skin your knuckles. Right. And I remember carrying it down this big long corridor, and the corridor could not be any longer. The worst thing you could do is look up, because you could see the door and it seemed like it was 10 miles away. So the best thing to do was just look down and you'd eventually get there. So I was looking down, arched over, carrying this big heavy bag, got to the bottom of the stairs, went to go up them, and on the second step, there was a fly stuck in the carpet. So I was looking and thought, I know that fly. So I dropped the bag, took the fly out, and it was a barbed hook, so it took a little bit of doing, but I got it out. and the fishing room was about, I don't know, it was maybe halfway down the corridor. So I walked back and I gave a little tap on the door, and Matt, the fisheries manager, was there. So I walked in and I said, sorry, excuse me, Matt, I found this on the carpet. It's a fly. It's a bloody butcher. And the minute I said bloody butcher, he turned around and he looked over his glasses at me and he said, how do you know what that is? And I said, I do a lot of fishing with my dad. And he said, oh, right, okay. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, young man. He said, just leave it there on the mantelpiece. I'll get it later on. He said, it could be a lucky one. Right, fair enough. So I went off about my duties anyway. And about, I'd say maybe a week or 2 weeks later, I was going home. And I always used to go out the back door of the manor house because you had to walk by the front of the manor house then and you could look at the river. So I always used to be looking down at the river as I was walking past.
Yeah.
And as I was walking along the front, Matt was pacing up and down with an old phone, like a red brick, a huge big thing.
Yeah.
And he was poking and pressing buttons. I don't really think he knew what he was doing with it. But anyway, he thought he was talking to someone. But I said, Matt, are you okay? And he goes, no, I'm not. He must have been let down now. The guide is meant to be down here. Ghillie's meant to come down and bring a gentleman fishing. He's standing down there at the bottom of the hill. And he said, there's no sign he won't answer his phone. I can't get him. And I said, right, I'll take him. And he said, would you be able? I said, yeah, no problem. I'll go down there now and I'll take him. What do I need? And he said, well, he has all his stuff. He said, just go inside and throw a pair of hip waders on you and see that bag. He said, bring that with you. So I did anyway. Threw on the stuff, went down the hill and said, hi. Chris was the man's name. I'm not sure of his second name, but I went down and said, hi, Chris, how are you? And he said, very well. I said, my name is Dan. And I was talking to Matt and he asked me to ghillie for you. And he said, oh, perfect. He said, come on in here beside me. So now I was only there to put a net under a fish. That was it. He didn't need any help from me. He was a very experienced angler. And as luck would have it, I suppose, he hit a fish about 12 pound. Now it was absolutely, I had no input whatsoever into him catching that fish. That was all him. But I did net it successfully, thankfully. There's been times since now where I haven't been great with the net, but in this particular, everything went right. But the salmon was tired, come up on its side. I was able to net the fish. Everything went well. Matt was delighted. And from there, then, it just took off.
That bloody butcher was a lucky fly for you then?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, talk about luck. You know, I mean, I could go down there now to the same place 10 times, 15, 20 times a season, and you wouldn't have a hope. Or, you know, you just wouldn't get a fish. It was just absolute and utter luck that I was passing that way. Luck that Matt sent me down or agreed to allow me to go down and guide for the man, and just absolute luck that man met that salmon that day. Yeah,
it was all meant to be, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. It was great. It worked out very well. Yeah.
So what happened then? Did you keep working with the linen, or did you automatically said, right, do you want a job, or did that come later?
Yeah. So when I was probably, I think I was about 17, and Matt passed away. And I took over. Well, when Matt passed, I took over the fishing and the bookings and different bits. I was very, very young. I mean, I had, it's not that I didn't have the interest. I didn't have the experience. And what I probably would have done is I would have put myself off fishing or put myself off ever going down that road of being a fisheries manager or a guide or a ghillie, because I would have had some bad experiences because I just didn't have the knowledge back then, you know, because it wasn't just about fishing. There was far more to it. So they had agreed that just for a little while I would take over. And I did for about 5 months until they found someone else. And I suppose now the man they found he was a lovely man. He's a gentleman, an absolute gentleman. But what disappointed me was the day I met him just outside the fishing room, and we shook hands. And I said, "Look, you know, I'm working later on. I have someone out, but I'll bring you fishing tomorrow, and we'll go for a cast together." And he said, "Well, there's no real point." He said, "I've never fished in my life," and it was a little bit of because Matt, you know, he was a fisherman. His whole family were fishermen, and even some of the records in Mount Juliet go back to 1900, 1920, and Matt's dad's dad was in it. You know, so it was a history, and it was kind of a break, and it kind of upset me a little bit, you know. And I mean, I went away then when I was probably 18, touching 19, and I'd done an apprenticeship in plumbing, and then I probably, when I'd done that and finished, I went back to Mount Juliet one day for dinner with who's my wife. We went back for dinner, and I knew 2 or 3 of the staff were still there. I kind of knew them, and they were talking to me. And this guy approached me and said, "Are you Dan?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Hi, my name is Des." And I said, "Oh, hi Des, how are you?" "I'm very well." He said, "Listen, you wouldn't mind coming back down next week," he said, "and just having a meeting with me, will you? Would you? I'd like to talk to you about the fishing here." He said, "I kind of look after it a little bit now, and I'd like to talk to you about it." I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I went back down the following week, and the same thing happened as had happened when I was 14. I ended up starting to guide there. Again, they asked me to come back and start guiding and everything else, and then I was guiding then, and then Des eventually moved on to better things on the estate, and I kind of stepped up then to take over what he was doing, which was managing the fishing, and I do all the reservations now and talk to the guests. So even at the moment, even this evening actually, I was talking to a guy from America who was coming over in April to fish. And, I'm able to kind of talk to him and say, you can expect this, you can expect that, this is where we're fishing. And I think it really adds to the experience that the person is going to have by really building it up, and just saying, look, this is what you can expect. And any questions you have, ask me. And he's asking me about this pattern and that pattern, and he's sending me pictures of flies and stuff. And it builds a friendship. And I think that's important. And that's what I always want.
I remember you saying the name Des. I do remember him because I have been a few times to Mount Juliet, not for a few years now. So is he still there?
Des, yeah. He's like the historian now. Des. So he goes around the estate and he gives tours, and I mean, he is an absolute wealth of knowledge, and I can learn a lot from Des because the way he talks to people and he interacts with people and he gets people's attention is just second to. I wish I could do it, especially with my kids. Wish I could get their attention like that. But anyway, he's just, the way he does it is absolutely unbelievable, and he's just one of those people. You obviously know these people too. There's there's a certain few people that you listen to as a person or an angler, and you learn off those people. And it's just everything they say and the way they interact with you, you take on everything they tell you, and Des is one of those people,
Yeah, I do remember him well, actually. So how long you been there? Full time?
I've been in Mount Juliet, let me see, I don't want to make myself sound too old here now. I've given away enough already. So, about 18 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so about 18 years, yeah. And that's kind of, there was a couple of years at the start, say 14 to 18, 19, 20, 20, then gone for 3, and then 21. Yeah, it would be, it'd be strong 18 years, yeah.
You must have been around when I called in at some point there.
Yeah, look, maybe so. I was there for the tournaments, the Amex. I remember fishing with Tiger Woods, actually, for the Amex. And Darren Clark, Paul Carrington. I fished with a few of them now, golfers, which was kind of surreal because I was really young. And I think at the time, like Tiger Woods he was making headlines everywhere, being able to hit a golf ball that far. And I remember watching him on telly and stuff, and you're kind of standing beside him and you find yourself not wanting to, but you do stare, especially at that age.
Yeah.
I'm kind of staring at this fella going, like, is this really happening? Like, I nearly asked him to pinch me, but anyway, it was unbelievable. But I tell you what you do realise, and something I realised, and it really, really helped me a lot in life, was they are only ordinary people that are very good at what they do. They still have bad days. They still have things they don't like. They get annoyed, they get tormented. And when you see them on the telly and stuff, and it paints a different picture than when you're standing with them in the river.
Yeah, I think when people talk about Mount Juliet, they think of two things. Before the fishing, actually, is the golf, and you've got that the race horses. You've got a stud there, haven't you? Yeah,
so the stud farm Ballylynch is across the river. So recently, well, not recently, a few years ago now, Mount Juliet was sold, and the stud was bought by a Canadian man, and the the estate itself then, Mount Juliet side, we'll say then, was bought by an investment group, Tetra Capital. So it split. Now, it was all one at one stage, but now it's separate now. But, you know, you can see the stud farm when you stand at the front. I call it the front of the house. So many people call it the back. But
I know what you mean.
I call it the front because the river's there. I mean, if I had that house and I said I was picking which was the front, it would definitely be the bit looking over the river.
Yeah.
It would be the front of the house.
Yeah.
You know, so I call it the front. But it's just, it's a special kind of a place, you know. I don't know, even when you're walking there, I have so many stories from Mount Juliet and things that have happened there for me with fishing. Now, I'm not too deep, you know. I just mean, like, you know, I was fishing one evening just for a quick one down at George's Wall, one of the beats, and I was fly fishing. And do you know that feeling you get when you know someone's watching you?
Yeah.
And I just thought, there's someone watching, there's something here, something's looking at me. I don't know what the hell it is. I was wading down along the pool, I was wet fly fishing, and I just got that feeling, and I said, there's something watching me. And I just looked up, and at the top of the wall, there was brambles, and there was a slight dip. And as I looked in the slight dip, I could see these kind of what looked like bare branches. They were kind of skinned back. It was a deer, a stag, standing there.
Wow.
And looking at me, watching me. And when I saw him then, he kind of let this whistle. The minute my eyes stopped on him, he let a whistle. It was the seeker. He let this whistle. Now, it absolutely now drained the blood out of me. When I thought, I don't mind telling you now, because, you know, sometimes I'd be fishing and I'd be walking back up the bank, and one of the lads would have been fishing below me, and, you know, he'd stand in behind a tree or something, and I'm happy he'd step out just to frighten the life out of me. And I thought that's what was going on. But just when I was standing there, I looked up and I saw this stag, and he whistled and looked at me and just turned his head and walked off as cool and calm as you like, you know. There were just little things like that just special. It's something that, you know, you step into the river, I find you're in a different world, you know. You're gone from reality and you're fishing, you know.
I've had some lovely times there myself, but the first time I went, it was a bit of a disaster. There was a competition called the Worldwide Trout Open, and they had it on the river, and it was in September time, and it was a washout. Absolute, like the Ganges it was, you know. But that must have been about 20 years ago now. But it's known for salmon fishing, the Nore, I know. But the trout fishing, is that pretty good as well then?
Yeah, so I love the trout is my main thing. That's mainly what I do is trout. And I absolutely love it for many different reasons. First of all, you know, in 100 meter, if you take any 100 meter stretch of the Nore or 150 meter stretch, you know, you could nearly do 2 or 3 different applications of fly fishing. So you could do maybe dry fly, wet fly, dry dropper if you wanted to. You know, you could do any of those 3 things within that distance. And I like that. And it's handy for me and nice for me as a fishing guide, you know, when I bring someone down, that we can switch all the time. You know, we can switch from wet fly, or I'll bring a couple of different rods with me, or a couple of different leaders, and I'm able to switch from wet fly to dry fly. Yeah. And the trout in there are hard fighting, lovely colours. There's plenty of them. They can be tricky. But look, we enjoy that. That's why we fish, you know. You
had a good fish last year, you said, didn't you?
I had a very good fish at George's Wall. I actually thought it was a grilse when I hooked it. It was on a dry fly. And there's a kind of a small shelf, and there's a couple of trees that just kind of jut out over the river slightly, and there was swarms of sedges in behind them. And I was fishing a dry, and there was one little place I was looking at in particular, and I was casting there and casting there and casting there, and the line went tight anyway, and I saw something, but I wasn't sure what, and I just lifted into it, and the first thing it done was turned and started swimming down the river. So I immediately thought, right, okay, this is a grill snow or something, or I foul hooked the fish maybe. I thought that's what was after happening. I fought it, followed it down a little bit, and eventually got it in, and I think it was just shy of 3 pounds.
Nice. That's great for
lovely,
river
lovely
fish. Yeah. Tell me, there's something I've often wondered, when you're the ghillie of an estate, and you get times where you get plenty of rain, especially in Ireland, you get days and days of it sometimes. What does your work entail then if you can't take clients out? Yeah,
so that's a brilliant question. So as a guide, and this is great for people who are maybe thinking of getting into guiding and stuff. It's well and good going down on a good day when the fish are taken, but you need to train yourself on days when the fish aren't taken. So I find myself, especially when the river's high, so I use a thing, hydrodata. So high for us would be anything from 0.60 up. That would be high. So I would go down and I would try heavy nymphs on tightline nymphs, say 4.5 mils, 5 mils sometimes, 4 mil, and fish them under an indicator. So our streamers is brilliant as well. So I would go down, I would be confident fishing the river up to about 1.2, which is 360, is 4 times higher than normal with us. So we'd be about 0.30. So I'd fish it up to 1.2, I'd fish it to. So from 0.30 up to 1.2, I would get fish on the normal stretch. Any higher than that, and we go to the tributary river just upstream, which is the King's River.
Right.
And the King would fish beautifully when the Nore is that high.
Ah. So if a customer, a client rather, comes and books the Nore for a day and is too high, you would take him up the King's then, would you?
Exactly, yeah. Take them to the King's River then if it's over 1.2, or sometimes you would have a conversation with them and just say, look, conditions aren't ideal. Maybe the river's high. We can try this spot, or if you want, there's a tributary river just half a mile away. We can drive up to that and you can fish that there. It'll be more pleasurable. Like if you get a really experienced angler, they go down, they don't mind. But if you get beginners, it's a little bit more tedious. And it depends how many of them there is too. But I have a diary there, and it has all the different water heights and the pools that fish best and the water temperature.
Yeah.
So if I can look at the hydrodata and it says 0.62 and 15 degrees. Well, if I go back in the diary, I can see the patterns I used, where they worked, and what areas I fished.
Would the salmon go up into the Kings?
They do, yeah. They would. So our salmon, we would start getting salmon through the fishery probably once it hits 0.42. You'll find that the salmon would start coming through at about 0.42. Then the Nore at times can rise really quickly and drop really quickly. And when that happens, when it goes from 0.42 down to maybe 0.30 or 0.32, 0.35 in around there, the salmon hold in the pools.
Yeah.
You'll get them holding in the pools the whole way down through the fishery.
Waiting for more water.
Yeah, so waiting for a little bit more and they'll move on up then, yeah.
Yeah. So the stretch itself, how long is the stretch for the Mount Juliet and the rest of the club?
So we have 2.5 miles of the Nore and we have 3/4 of a mile of the Kings, just where it joins. So from the joinings, we call it the joinings, the pool there. So from there, 3/4 of a mile upstream, we have the fishing rights on that.
And when does the season start there?
So we're the 17th of March until the 30th of September.
Oh, right. So same as the lakes. Some of them open earlier, don't they?
I wish it did, but unfortunately it doesn't.
So how did it all start for you then? How did you get into fishing?
Right, so, going back to the beginning, it was my dad. He introduced me to fishing. He was brilliant with me, in fairness, everything he done for me, and I think back now, and the headaches I must have caused him, and the money I must have cost him with casting flies into trees and everything else. But he always, he always encouraged me. He always brought me. He never said no to me, but he didn't never ever force me. He always just kind of let it be my idea that we go fishing. If he was going fishing, he'd say to me, I'm going down big worms, I'm going fishing. And I'd say, oh, can I come? Yeah, okay, come on. But he'd never force me to go or anything. But it's, all the memories and everything that comes with it, I think I said it to you there. I always remember I would get up on a Saturday morning after being in school all week, and the first thing you would smell when I got up was the shaving foam. Had a smell, like a minty kind of a smell, and a slight smell of Old Holborn, the tobacco, because Dad would always have a shave. He would always have a shave and put a shirt on before he went fishing. So I could smell the Old Holborn, the slight bit of smoke, the shaving foam, and then the aftershave as well was denim blue. the aftershave. And back then it was mega expensive. Back then I think it was something like £25. I saw it last week in Mr. Price for £2 for the bottle, and I actually bought a bottle.
No.
Because I can smell, sometimes I just put a little tiny bit on because it wouldn't be great by today's standards now by an aftershave, but I put a tiny little bit on my collar sometimes, and it's amazing how it brings you back, but yeah, it started there, and we used to go to the River Barrow, was our local river then, so it was probably 10 minutes away in a place called Ballytyglee, which is on the Carlow-Kilkenny border, and we used to fish there for perch, pike. We used to fish, as funny as that sounds, so anything that came along we would take, and then we had just down, we used to fish the second weir, we used to call it, the second waterfall we used to say actually, and we used to fish there, but as it got near evening time, we would go down to what Dad used to call Bubble Way, which was faster water where we used to put on the plastic bubble and some flies.
All right, yeah.
And fish with those and, cast out and reel back slowly. But, I mean, I lost a lot of them bubbles and flies because, I was only young and, and I was casting, I was letting the line go sometimes a bit quick and it would go up really high in the air and it'd catch a tree behind me and, it'd snap off and different bits. But, he never lost his patience with me, and he had every right to, I suppose, but he never ever lost his patience. And it stood for me later on in angling, and it stands for me with Anthony too. It's just learning. And if we catch one, we catch one. If we don't, we don't. But let's have fun trying.
Did you get into fly fishing then? And did he fly fish as well?
He didn't. Dad didn't really do too much fly fishing, but what really got me into it, I suppose, we were fishing one day down where I was Bubble Way. I keep referring to it as Bubble Way. So we were fishing there at Bubble Way, and I saw this guy walk down along and at the other side of the river, and he got in and he started using what I thought back then like a whip, and I was like, what's he doing? I said, look how thick his fly line is, or his line is. I can see it from here. He'll never catch a fish. He must be using huge hooks to be able to put that fly line through the hook eye, because I didn't know anything about leaders or any of that kind of stuff. I was only a young fella, and I was looking at the loops and the line, the way the line was going in loops back and forward, and I thought, wow, look at that, and eventually he caught a trout, and then he had another one a little bit later, and then another one, and I was looking going, how's he getting them? So I asked my dad about it, and he explained as best he could about what he was doing, and about, I think it was that Christmas actually, I had asked for a fly rod. It was a Shakespeare something, and I got it anyway, and I had no, I didn't have any experience with fly, so I went out and started swinging this thing around, and I ended up in the end tying a stick onto the end of it and getting the dog to grab the stick and run off with it, and I would fight him in the garden. I'd have the fly rod and I'd be fighting this little terrier, trying to get the rod around, and he would, and it was the way the rod felt, and then I did try a little bit, but I came away from it a bit. But I suppose when I hit Mount Juliet at 14, 15, Matt was kind of like, if you're salmon fishing or you're trout fishing, you're going to use a fly. You're not using a bubble. Yeah. You're using a fly rod. That's it. And I was kind of pushed down that route. And I taught myself for the little while I was there. But I remember one day I went on to the internet and I was looking at something, or I looked at a demonstration of something, or someone casting, and I saw the word APGAI, APGAI. And I was like, what's APGAI? I didn't know. And so I Googled it, APGAI. And it came up, that it was an organisation in Ireland. APGAI Ireland was an organisation in Ireland. And, they had a group of instructors. And I was really, really interested. So I downloaded the syllabus and I had a look at it. And I thought, I can do that. That's no problem. I'm able to do that. And I thought I could until I went to a mentor and done a little bit of casting with him. And he wasn't long about telling me, you have a lot to learn. And I did. I know he was very nice about it. But I went down the APGAI route then because there was a few reasons. One reason was people were paying an awful lot of money to fish with me, to the hotel and me as well. And I wanted to make sure I was giving them the most I could. I didn't want to be just like, look, it'll do. I'm grand, I'm all right. I'm not. I want to go and I want to learn different analogies to get through to someone and help them cast or help them to become a better caster. Or sometimes they just don't want to, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine too. If you want a couple of tips, I would have given them.
That's the thing. It's all well and good sometimes to be able to cast really well yourself, but to teach somebody, it's a different ball game. It's to put your point across and to get them to understand. It's not easy.
Yeah, and you're dead right. And what you actually said there about being able to cast and teach is different things. And you're right. And the guy, I still keep in touch with him. Hopefully you'll hear it. So Pat Hughes in APGAI, he's an advanced caster. Pat was my assessor when I eventually did go and do my test. And he was showing me a few things later. And I'd done an exhibition with him in Belfast on Ireland Underwater Expo. I was up there with him. We were on a casting pond together, and I was talking to him, and he was very, very honest, but he had so many different ways of teaching someone. He had 5 different analogies for a forward cast, or, he had different ways of teaching people and getting through to you, but he had a really nice manner and a nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
And he said to me the very words you said. He said, "It's well and good that you can cast like that, but can you teach it?" And for a long time, I didn't know what he was talking about. I slightly kind of had an idea what he was on about, but not really and truly until I moved on a little bit further. And I realized, there's no point in just learning one way to teach someone. You have to learn 10 different ways, and you have to be able to talk to them and be nice about it. And, just really, and that's the way, to be honest with you, I'm naturally like that anyway. I love teaching people to cast if they want to learn. And if they don't, that's fine. It's about getting a fly to the fish, So the fish doesn't know who cast or what cast you used or what rod you have or what line you're using. The fish doesn't know that, So it's about getting the fly. So some people are happy with the way they cast, and it's perfectly fine. It's no problem. And some people would like to try something different, and that's good too,
So you got your qualification for the single hand rod, yeah? Casting?
I did, yeah. I got the single-handed qualification a little while. No, it was a while ago now. I got it, so I was delighted. I mean, I grew up watching people casting on YouTube and different things, and I always wanted to be able to do it. And I remember the day I went up for my exam. I drove up. It was up in Banbridge Angling Centre, up the north. So I went up there, went in nervous as hell. I wasn't half as nervous the day of my wedding, to be honest with you, which was a short time after. And I remember going up, and I was really nervous. And I was just thinking, this qualification means so much to me. And it did, because I looked at it for so long. And this really means a lot to me that I get this. I have to do it. I can't go. I'm not leaving here unless I get this. And I went in and sat down first and done the theory side. So all the questions and different bits, I got that done and done my knots, the different knots I had to do. And my presentation, which I was worried about because I cannot stand the sound of my own voice. I hate it. I was just really nervous. So I got through that, and Arthur Greenwood and Trevor Green said to me, "Dan, look, you've done really well. That's great. Your practical assessment is next outside." So I said, right, okay. I had a bit of a break, went outside, grabbed the rod, and it was really, really windy. So I went out, started setting up the rod, straightened out the leaders, put on the glasses, the wool tag, went out, introduced myself, spoke about the rod, and done the first few casts. And I had one guy standing down watching the distance at the end, one guy to my left watching the rod and my wrist, and a guy behind me watching rod tracking. So I had 3 people watching the cast, and to say my legs were like jelly would be an understatement. So again, it just meant so much to me. So I went back in anyway, and there was another guy doing it, and I had to wait till he finished. So I was in there for an hour waiting for the lads to come back to let me know. And I remember sitting down, and the 3 of them sat there, and they welcomed me into the organisation. And I just wanted to jump up and start shouting. I was absolutely delighted. I could not contain it. Because, like I said, I had so much respect for everyone that was there in the organisation. And, I had to get this. I had to have this. This was the next step. And I got it. And since then, I've met so many interesting people. I kept in touch with Pat Hughes, and Pat would text me every now and again saying, list every fault with the forward cast. And I'd be there texting like mad, trying to get them up these 20 or 30 different faults there might be or something, But, it was just, I was accepted into it. It was a great group of people. So it was definitely a huge step, and it was well worth doing,
Do you actually fish with a double-hander?
Right, so the double-handed syllabus is on my this year. So I'm lucky enough, and I say lucky enough because I am very lucky to know Glenda Powell. So Glenda I met through APGAI, and Glenda came down to see me at the fishery, and we had a chat, and we ended up working with Cadence together as well. So Glenda came down one day to meet me, and Glenda I had studied on my look for the syllabus as well. I was watching her casting and doing different things, fascinated. She's a wonderful caster. So her and Noel came down, Noel Fitzmaurice, and Noel is another lovely fella, and the two of them came down anyway. We walked the fishery together, we were having a bit of a chat, and we'd done a small video together. We'd done a little bit of fishing, and Glenda was she spoke to me and she said, look, she was talking about Cadence, and she said, I'd like to bring James Robbins down to meet you next week, if that's okay. And I said, yeah, of course. Just really mad because I wanted to meet Glenda and Noel again, because I had a really good time with them on the river.
Yeah.
They came back down the week after with James Robbins, and we went into the same room. I gave him the story about the bloody butcher, and I brought him through the walk that I had done.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and we sat down, and it was in the same room and the same place that I had sat with Matt. And I remember, again, kind of being brought back to APGAI a little bit with the suspense and the waiting. And she looked at James and she said, James, what do you think? And James said, yeah, definitely. So Glenda said to me then, would you like to work with Cadence? And different. She went through the different bits and everything else. And again, it was just absolutely I was talking to someone here that I had watched for a very long time and studied for a very long time, and just thought that, again, pinched me, I thought I was dreaming. But so I've been working with Glenda. So a roundabout way of telling you that, double-hander now. So I've done a little bit with Glenda, and I'm doing a little bit of practicing. So I'm hoping to get my double-handed qualified cert this year. So I'm a little bit of double. I think the double-handed casting, I'm watching it done. I've watched Glenda a few times. It's absolutely, it's phenomenal. There's so a single-handed casting. But it's just, I really, really like the double-handed rod. And I think micro-spay fishing it's something I'm going to do more of this year. So there's the 3-4 weights, or the 5-6 weight, and 7-8, and so on and so on. But I think I love wet fly fishing. So I think the 4-5 or the 5-6 for wet fly fishing on the river would be perfect, because I get a lot of people sometimes that come to me and they have shoulder problems, or they have a bad wrist, or casting tires them and hurts their back or whatever. So I think that with this, the micro spay, it will make it that little bit easier for them to cast,
Yeah, and the Nore, from what I remember, it's a big river in places, isn't it? So I suppose a double-hander would be beneficial to fishing it anyway.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And like I said, I can't wait now. I've done a little bit last year with it at the tail end of the season, but this year now I'm going to start from March, April. I might do a little bit of streamer fishing or something as well with it. But I'm really looking forward to it. So that was the other reason with the double-hander. I kind of want to go down the same route as that, but I was with Glenda Saturday gone, just down at the Blackwater salmon fishery with her there, and I was talking to her, and she was just showing me a few different things, and it really made me see the difference between APGAI qualified and APGAI advanced.
Yeah.
It just she was saying some things, and it was like, not that I knew them, but she was going into kind of the psychology of teaching someone and what to do, and just different things. It just meant it was just absolutely, because sometimes some people look at people that are teaching and doing things and think, oh sure, I can do that. What's different? I can do that. But there's a lot more to it than just teaching someone how to cast.
Yeah. I suppose
someone comes to you, it could be anything. It could be anxious, it could be a little bit nervous, and it's up to you as a person or an instructor to pick up on that and make the learning place or the learning, say, area as comfortable as possible for them.
Yeah.
So that they take on the information you're going to give them.
It's a big thing for people to come to you, isn't it? You know, you didn't appreciate that people are coming to you and they're nervous, and it's not something you do every day. I guess now you're with Cadence, you'll be doing some demonstration and shows, maybe, will you?
Yeah. So on the next one is the 27th of this month. It's in Carysville. We're doing a kind of a demonstration there. I'll be there, Glenda, Stevie Munn, James Robbins, and probably a couple of others as well. So we'll be down there doing a little bit with that, and then there's some over in England as well. And then, of course, there's the Irish Spring Angling Fair I think that's in April, I think. But it'll be on social media anyway to be advertised. That's in Ardare Springs,
Right.
which is it's another wonderful fair. I was at the Irish Fly Fair as well in November last year, and I done a demo. That was actually my first big demo. Was at the Irish Fly Fair, and fair play, and thanks very much to Stevie Munn for putting his trust in me to come up and do it, because I was nervous. I had rehearsed it and gone over it, and I have the notes actually in a frame and put up beside the fly tying desk at home. I wrote down all the notes and went through it, and like people who had done it hundreds of times were like, you'll be grand, don't worry, you'll be all right, don't worry about it. And I was like, right, okay. But I think the funniest thing was, and the thing to put my mind at ease the most was, the morning of it I went out because I was doing instructing with APGAI, try before you buy with Cadence, and my demo was at 3:00. That was it. And I was trying to practice. And I was just standing there with the APGAI guys and I was talking to them. And I noticed Ian Gordon walking down towards the river. So I watched him and I seen what he was doing. I said, I better go down and say hello to him, So I followed him down and, hi Ian, how are you? How good, how are you? How are you keeping? And I said, I'm good, I'm good, yeah. And I said, just doing a bit of casting. Yeah, I have a demo. He said, I just want to make sure I can still do it.
Yeah.
Now, this is a world casting spay champion, and he's down there making sure he can still do it. I thought I was up at 11 o'clock the night before on the grass outside, casting towards the street light to see if my leader was straightening out, to remind myself I could do it. So that made me think that, hey, listen, I'm not on my own here. Ian Gordon is doing it. I'll be fine. He has to do things like that, and I'm doing it too. So he kind of put me at ease a little bit, and Glenda was brilliant, she filled me full of confidence as well. And I went up and I kind of remember my first word or sentence, hi, I'm Dan. And after that, I haven't a clue.
Yeah.
What happened? But everyone clapped at the end, so it must have been good, or they were trying to get rid of me, one or the other anyway.
Well, there's something I want to bring up as well. When we chatted in the week, you told me a story which I've got to get you to tell again.
So what happened was, when I was younger, 4 or 5, it wasn't like now where you have 200 different cartoons. It was James Bond, Indiana Jones, or MacGyver. They were the three guys, And mine was James Bond. Absolutely loved it, watched it. My dad used to kind of play around with me with James Bond, but I had a little Jack Russell Terrier, the same one that used to play fish for me when I got my first fire. So he was the bad guy, so he was called Scum. So yeah, that was my little Jack Russell got called Scum anyway. And I was James Bond, and I used to jump around outside and climb the trees trying to get away from the bad guy who was the terrier. And I was just fascinated by James Bond in 007. And when I got a call one day in Mount Juliet many, many years later, when I was maybe 15-ish, maybe 16, I got a call and said, we have a VIP guest that wants to go fishing, and are you available? And I said, yeah, no problem. So didn't think much of it, And I remember walking up to reception. We used to meet the guests at reception at that time. I walked up to reception and the lady was there, and I said, hi, how are you? I have a booking at 11 o'clock. Yeah, do you know who it is? I said, no, sorry. I was just told it was a VIP. They're staying in room 32. And she said, no, your guest is there. And she said, I can't stop looking at him. He's out there in the grass, sitting at a table having a cup of coffee. So I looked out, and who's sitting there? Only Pierce Brosnan. And I looked again, and I said, is that Pierce Brosnan? And the lady says, yeah. She said, have you been living under a rock for the last couple of days? He's been staying here for the last 3 days. And I said, oh, I don't know. Yeah. And is that who I'm taking fishing? And she said, yeah, that's who you're taking fishing. So now I just wanted to tell the whole world this. So at the time, he was filming I don't know which one it was, but it was one where the Aston Martin Vanquish had the guns that like came up out of the car, the Vanquish, whatever one that was. Yeah, so he was just finished filming that actually, and he was over to kind of relax and go fishing. So I took Pierce Brosnan and Sean Brosnan, his son, and his girlfriend at the time, Sean's girlfriend at the time, and we went to the Nore for 2 days, and we went to the Kings for a day. So, you know, the story goes, 007 was my childhood hero, you know, and then at 15 to turn around and fish with, at the time, 007 was, now that was unbelievable. But again, he was just a guy that was really good at what he does, and he's so genuine and down to earth, and spoke to me, what do you want to be when you're older, what would you like to do, you know, and just, you'll get there, and all this kind of stuff, just positive stuff, and real calm and cool and everything else. But it was just absolutely surreal. It was just unbelievable, you know.
And did you get him into a fish?
Oh yeah, we got fish. We had to make sure of it. He done well actually. He went up, I think on the second day we got rain. So the third day the river was ever so slightly coloured with a bit of weed coming down. So we went up to the Kings and we fished the Kings just after joining there, and he had some lovely trout and he got some nice pictures and everyone was happy. So again, it was luck, or someone was looking down on me, one or the other. And,
yeah.
Later on, kind of in life, then I suppose I just kind of 007 kind of went out me head a little bit, and I didn't really see much of him and different bits, you know. But it just to go back again, like I said, it was just absolutely, it was a dream come true for a young fella anyway, just to do something like that. And any stories I've heard about him, he's been nice and everything else, you know. Yeah,
to have 3 days with him or something, you must have got to know him quite well then.
Yeah, and I suppose the other one is as well. At the time, my mum was working in the Lady Helen, which is the restaurant attached to the Manor House, and she came home one day and she gave me a big hug, you know. I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "You won't believe what happened." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Pierce was in for dinner." And I said, "Oh, he's Pierce now, is he?" And she said, yeah, he's Pierce. But she went up to him at the table to take his order, because my mum would have been kind of the longest member of staff serving at that time there. Right. So, you know, it's always the one sent out kind of thing to the VIP tables and that. So she went out and she said, "Hello, Mr. Brosnan, can I take your order?" And he said, "Sorry, is your name Sharon?" And Mum said, "Yeah." "You're Dan's mum?" "Yeah." "Oh, Sharon, please, call me Pierce." And my mother said that she just nearly fainted when he had said that, you know. So, yeah, she went up, then she was doing his room service and everything else in the morning times, bringing the tray up, taking his dinner, ended up dealing with him. But, yeah, so it was that was great for her as well. It was a nice memory for her too, you know.
Yeah, I bet you meet quite a few people there, or see them anyway, whether not they fish or not. I bet you get some, because it is probably one of the top 3 hotels and estates in Ireland, I guess. So you're going to get some names there. It
is, yeah, and it's a great place for with fishing, because the river, like I said, I keep it to only 20, 25 members, and I mean 10 of them are probably only active, really. You know, some get down 2 or 3 times a year, so it's never heavily fished. So it's kind of for people beginning and stuff. It's great because the fish in the pools we take them aren't overly wary or anything, so they have a really good chance of getting a fish, you know. And then, of course, that's kind of why I went off and just educated myself as much as I can when it comes to angling, to be able to be helpful. And I went as well with, I gave myself I made a kind of a 4 or 5 year plan, and I ended up on the first year doing just nymphs and dry dropper, and I spent the whole season nymph dry. I wouldn't do any other method. And I went to various different people over Ireland and spoke to them about their setups, how they done it. I went and stewarded at as many competitions as I could, to get the information and so I could make myself better. And I did. And then the second year I done wet fly, and I ended up staying on wet fly for that year. And again, I just went to different people, spoke to people, tried to educate myself as best I could. And because I knew I'd eventually get there and I'd know enough, you know, I'm never going to learn it in one season. So at least when someone comes to you now, you know, you give them the best chance. I want to give them the best thing, the best experience I can possibly give them, so that they get their first trout. Or you know, it's like me when I go to a different country and I go to fish. You know, you go, and to be honest with you, I don't really care whether I catch a big fish or a small fish. I don't care. But I would like to say, okay, I've been in such and such a place and I caught a fish. I don't really care how big the fish is. It doesn't matter to me. But I just like to say I caught one. And it's just, I see that then for the people here, you know, and they come to me and I don't stop until they get one. And when they get one, then it's like someone has lifted 10 ton of bricks off your back when the first fish comes to the net. It's the best feeling in the world, you know.
Yeah, I've done it myself. I've taken people guiding, and you're just willing them to catch a fish. The pressure is so much on you, isn't it? You just want them to be happy and catch a fish. But going on to the river then, I thought it was just private for the hotel, but it's not. There's like a syndicate or a certain number of people, like you can have a season ticket on the river, is it?
Yeah, so there's a membership then for either trout fishing or salmon fishing or both. And again, like I said, I kind of cap it at 20, sometimes 25, depending, and just have them on it. But it's nice because it's a presence as well. The hotel want a certain amount of that too, that, you know, someone can stand on the bridge and take a picture of someone that's fly fishing with Mount Juliet House in the background. Yeah. You know, it adds to the overall experience down there. So I keep bees down there, and I have pheasants I raise and release, not for shooting now, they're just released. They're the best fed pheasants, and they have the best life of the pheasant as long as they stay within Mount Juliet Estate boundaries. If they go outside of that, they'd need a bulletproof vest on them. Yeah. So, you know, but once they stay inside, they're fine. So I release the pheasants and stuff. But again, it's only for guests to go there. They want to go to the countryside. They want to be out in the countryside. Someone fly fishing. You know, sometimes we walk past it, and it's not that we don't see it. We do see it, but we're used to its beauty, and we end up thinking, I can see it again tomorrow. Tomorrow. You know, whereas these people could be from New York City, and it could be, you know, 5 years before they see someone catching a fly line again. And sometimes someone has never seen someone catching a fly line. You know, they're fascinated by it.
Well, I've enjoyed this chat, and I've been looking forward to it for a while. I'm glad we eventually got it together. But before I wrap up, there's one more question, as usual, I ask. Where would you want to be to make your last cast?
My last cast? Okay, so I suppose, first of all, the one thing I'll say to you is, before I go into it, I'm fierce for this. Sometimes I don't know when to shut up. But yeah, so really, I heard a story one time. A guy said to me, he said, you know, every goal you have in life is a ghost, right? So if you make 6 goals, you have 6 ghosts. And until you complete them, the ghost will follow. So I've stuck by that, and I believe that. And as I make a goal, I have this vision in my head of a ghost following me around. So my last cast would be where my first cast was, definitely. And it would be with a bloody butcher. So I would go down to Bubble Way, as my dad would call it, and I'd have my bubble, I'd have my bloody butcher, and I would have my cast, and I would hope to God that there's no ghosts with me. I'd hope that I've passed all my, that I've got my double-handed syllabus, and I've passed all my goals, and I've done everything that I want to do with fishing. So that would be my last cast. My last cast would be at Bubble Way, where my very first cast was, and I would probably just sit there, have that cast with my feet over the bank, a packet of Werther's Original, they're my favourite fishing sweets, and maybe a bottle of Coke as well, and just reminisce on my whole journey on fishing, and just go through everything. And I'd have a small little bit of denim blue on my collar to remind me of waking up on those Saturday mornings and getting the slight smell of denim blue. So yeah, I'd go back to where it all started again, like I said, and reminisce on everything.
Many thanks, Dan. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thanks again for becoming a Patreon. Lots more in store the next couple of weeks. That's all for now. Tight lines, and may they always be up in the wave.